Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering, who are we to be having these pros on as guests? Cassie and I both have extensive training and experience in both partnered and solo dancing. Cassie has about 23 years and I have about 25. So tonight, well, I guess it's afternoon for our guest, but tonight for us, we have on Melina Ramirez Stuart, and we are very excited to have her.
Hello, thank you for having me. Yes, it's 2 p.m. on a Friday, and that's how you would time travel now. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Have you just been able to do that time zone math like instantly most of your life, having to go back and forth?
No. I was very self-dependent on my dance partner at the time, Ben. He handled all that. I was just like, I don't know. Even now, I'm like, Google, where am I? What time is it? It's different. Even in the interview, when we were trying to schedule it together, I'm like, yeah. Plus 10, plus 2, take away the 7, plus the Friday. Yeah. Over here.
It's always complicated, but you know what? We figured it out. So
yeah, and I've been here for 10 years. You'd think it'd be better, but it's not.
Okay, so I think we'll kick it off with some questions. So I think our first is just going to be, how did you find West Coast Swing? How did you start your journey in the community?
Well, I started dancing when I was 10 years old. My best friend at the time, my other best friend is on the line right now, so I'm going to say my other best friend when I was younger, because she's going to get upset if I say that she's not my best friend. So I'll say my best friend when I was 10, was taking like hustle classes at Arthur Murray Dance Studios. So I don't even know. Are they still around?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think there are fewer than before the pandemic, but they still exist.
Okay. So there's an Arthur Murray Dance Studio across the street from my house. I'm from Woodland Hills. I'm from the Valley in California. And obviously West Coast Swing was like really big at the time. It still is. It's like the home of West Coast Swing. And I just fell in love with partner dancing. And I had no training before then. So I think I was on like my 6th grade dance team or something like that. That's the training I had, right? I was like on drill team, so I knew how to like march in place, and that's about it. And then that was like partner dancing. So then I did Arthur Murray. I did all of their classes. I paid like $500 to enter a competition where I danced for like 1 minute. Like it was my thing, right? And then one of my teachers went over to another dance studio called Dance Scene in the Valley, and then that's actually where I found West Coast Swing. And because I'd already kind of know Arthur Murray will teach you like East Coast Swing, or they'll teach you like Lindy Hop, like their version. And so I really fell in love with that kind of style. So then when I moved to this other dance studio, there was a class for kids to learn swing dancing. And it was taught by Christopher Hussey, which for anybody on right now, it was around back then. And then he moved to a studio called the Underground Dance Studio, where Melody Cochran used to teach at. Melody Cochran at the time was like big on the scene. She was a country western coach. And then that's where I met my dance partner, Ryan Crutcher. I don't know if you guys know who Ryan is, but yeah, he was my first ever dance partner in West Coast Swing when I was 12. And he wasn't meant to be dancing with me. He was already dancing with somebody else. But we were 12. I guess 12-year-olds get into fights about something. I have no idea, but they didn't work out. Okay. There was a shoe thrown or something, and it was chaos. So we had like 2 months or 3 months to learn this, get ready for this US Open thing that was happening in November. I'm like, what is this? I have no idea. Like, I've only been doing this dance for a bit. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then we competed that year and we won. I would say I was like 13 dancing to fever. So I don't necessarily think it was the best thing to do. Even like Sylvia Sykes, I think she gave us like 4th place. So she's like, you're 12 and you're doing a booty roll, like not okay. And I'm like, yeah, not okay now. But back then it was like, smallest top, biggest roll wins. So yeah, that's how I got started into it. And then just really fell into the scene of it. I think for me, it was about community. It was always like on a personal level, it was always my mom and I growing up. We were just the two of us. So I found this family essentially in the West Coast swing world. And at the time, like it was filled with juniors. Like we were this little family. There was a place called Memories in Whittier, which was the place that just everybody went to dance. And then, you know, I was winning US Opens and I was doing Invitational Jack and Jills, and I still couldn't get into the Hacienda. I had to dance in the lobby, you know. So I grew up essentially in this bubble of West Coast swing. So
Yeah.
you know, that's how I discovered it.
Wow. That's great. What do you consider your like biggest accomplishments in your time in the dance world?
Well, I would say when I was 21, when I was at like the height of my West Coast swing career, I would have said that my biggest accomplishment is like winning Invitational Jack and Jills and you know, winning a US Open. Or I remember I was 15 and I won with Robert Royston Capital Invitational. Like that was a really big deal to me, right? At the time I would have said that. Now I look back and I would say my biggest accomplishment was like definitely making an impression in the dancing of originality and just being myself in a way. Like I didn't really know how to be myself at the time. I was just trying to figure it out. But I look back and I'm like, shoot, you wore like shorts to the US Open. Like nobody did that. You wore boots and shorts. Now everyone's wearing shorts. Like everyone's like, what are you doing? You're crazy. Or Ben and I would dance to all these cool songs, or which we're about to watch in a little bit. Like we danced the slowest song ever on the circuit. So I loved that part. I love that we would always take a little bit of a risk. And so that's kind of what I'm most proud of.
Okay, awesome. Do you want to give just like a little history of your competition? Just because I think that some people, especially we have, I think, a lot of newer to the community viewers. And I think that you're probably not as well known to some of them, especially in the US.
So do you want to know about my competitions?
Yeah, competitions.
My resume. Okay. Well, I mean, you can, when I say I grew up in the community, you can go on YouTube and every single day, every single routine that I've done since I was 12 years old, 21 is on there, which is pretty cool. It's like little reality TV show of my life. I first won my first US Open title at 13 years old. I just turned 12. From there, I won another one in 2003. And then I went into the adults division, so the classic division, when I was 18. And from there, just placed top 5 in probably every year. Yeah, like I'm going to say, yes, there's a lot of amazing first places and everything. Like Grand Nationals was an amazing one to win one year. Champions Jack and Jills and a lot of those like big events were a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that because, you know, you have 7 judges judging you on this routine for 3 minutes. Like you have to remember that they might not like you. It might not be their flavor. You know, it might not be the music that they like. But when you do like a Jack and Jill Invitational, it's really cool because there's a lot more people involved in that and it's a bit more special. So I think that would be my resume. And then when I went back to West Coast Swing after taking a break with some different partners, we did like more Champions Strictly finals and wins and all that. So yeah, that's the way I'm expressing my resume because I feel awkward because I'm like, I'm awesome.
No, that's totally fine. I think that was a great resume, as you put it.
In the field that I'm in now, I can easily be like, I'm really good at this. I'm an asset to the team. Like I'm a fucking boss, right? For some reason with me, I think it's because, again, I grew up with it and there's all this personal ties with it. It's so weird to still be like, yeah, I won these things. This is what I did. And, you know, because there's no middle, there's no like, I was here, now I'm not. Like, oh, who's that? I wrote Mel's bio for her. Yes. Like, right. So like, I'm a big believer, like in this world, there's so many before and afters, right? Like before the diet, after the diet, before she moved across the world, after she moved across the world, right? So like my resume is not done. Like I might go back and win all the things. I have no idea, or I might never do that again. So yeah.
That's great. Okay,
That's
so what drew you into the West Coast swing world, like, and just really made you stay for so long since you have been in it for a while?
What made me stay was probably my intense like daddy issues.
Oh.
Um, you decided to have me on. This is what's happening.
Yep, it's
You
great.
know, yes,
We're used to this. We're used to the candid, and we love it.
Yep.
it was community. It was community. Honestly, that's what it was. Like I said, it was just a really small family
Mhm.
for me. And we left Argentina when I was really young, and
Mhm.
we moved to California, and there wasn't a lot around me that was quite positive. And so when I found, in particular, West Coast Swing, because there wasn't a lot of community anywhere else, it
Mhm.
was it was just what drew me in. And I think even now to this day, I think the big push is like, yeah, it's a really cool dance, it's really versatile, but like, where else are you going to find this kind of community, where you can literally go to the States and call anybody up in any place and be like, hey, I know you, or like, hey, we've danced together before. So the community really stuck with me and family. And I got to know a lot of amazing people. But yeah, because it was family, it's like they were all kind of taking care of me. So I really loved that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's such a good thing to have the community for West Coast Swing. I mean, there are, like you were saying, so many dances that really don't have that interaction necessarily, especially like with ballroom. If anyone's ever been involved with ballroom, like that's just not the vibes.
Yeah.
There's a lot more
You know,
competition.
at the time, I was also going back and forth. So Ryan and I, when we were doing the US Open, we were
Mhm.
also competing in country dancing. So UCWDC country dancing.
Yeah.
And like we went to Worlds, and there's this really cute video of us. Our first ever event was at San Jose, which it isn't, my friend's family ran that, and it was amazing. And that was my first ever event. And I look at those videos and I'm just like, you're just so little and you're just like a little baby.
Yeah.
And like I was actually wearing Robert Royston and Lorene Baldovi's old costumes. Like Melody Cochran was the person that made a lot of these costumes for these people. And so she had access to all of these random costumes. And I wore one of them. But I was like this 12-year-old wearing this costume.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I will say that that dance scene had a lot of community as well. So it
Mhm.
was really great. And I think it fluctuates though. Sometimes the community is really welcoming,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Some states are, sometimes they're not. And at the time when I was growing up in the scene, it wasn't an international community. It was like California was the place to be, New York as
Right.
well. And
Yeah.
it was like we didn't necessarily do well in competition to post it on social media, like there was none of that. It was like we did well to win like Phoenix 4th of July
Mhm.
and win like $100, like we we did well to win like the US Open, so we can say like we won the US Open, and put that on our resume. So sometimes the community was great, sometimes it wasn't, but for me the junior aspect of always traveling with these guys was my favorite part.
Mhm. That's great. Who do you feel like out of the champions that are still in the community, like really heavily involved, who were you most involved with when you were younger?
Well, I haven't even gotten to the part of like it's been a couple of years of going into the community, but I hadn't even met Ben until much later. So
Mhm.
obviously involved with him a lot, and he's still just like doing amazing things. I grew up with like Ben McHenry. He was NorCal, so that was a bit different, but we grew up in the juniors division together. Jordan and Tatiana were so it was Jordan and Tatiana came out of juniors. The next set generation of juniors was us. So
Yeah.
you had people like I know, like Sarah Breck, Michael Pangan, you had Lacey Schwimmer, you had us, you had Samantha Buckwalter. She at the time was dancing with Ricky Andrade, who was from NorCal, right? So you had this this next generation of kids essentially now coming up. And
Right.
so Jordan, Tatiana, Colin, Sarah, Deborah, they were all now like people that we looked up to that would coach us and teach
Mhm.
us like what to do, what not to do. And so they would be the people that we'd go to private lessons with. And then as I got older, we all just became friends.
Mhm.
it was a gradual way. Once, I was now in the same division. Once you're in the same division as somebody, and once you're getting ready backstage together, you have the same schedule, like automatically you start to fluctuate and become friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you feel like it was intimidating when you were kind of making that move into that same division and competing against them? Because I think one of the videos that we're going to look at was second place, and Jordan Tott had their Viva La Vida routine, I think the same year they got first, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Was it intimidating?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Intimidating.
mean, yeah, it's intimidating. It's so intimidating. I had this complex. I think I was like 16 years old and I'm winning all these competitions. So there was a part of me who was like always put on this pedestal because, especially in California, like I was this upcoming junior winning all the things. Then there's this other side when you enter then something like a classic division, when it's just like a whole different field. Like I think Ben and I had only lost one junior division at the time. And it was, I can say this now, but at the time it was like, yay, we'll win, and then you go into like a classic and you're like, ha ha ha, okay, it's a totally different scene. Yes, these people all are friends. Like I go to their birthdays and I'm like their little sister and they love me, but like I'm now their competitor, and that's like a different relationship as well, which I don't think a lot of people find it very easy to separate both. I think it's like, oh, I love you, you're my little sister, and this is so much fun. And now it's like, oh, now you're competing against me, I can't talk to you. So it was intimidating, but of course it was. Everyone was so amazing. And like I said, it was a very interesting time to come up in West Coast Swing, because it wasn't about the social media. It wasn't about it wasn't really even about like was it like the Jack and Jills and stuff. It was very, very focused on routine competitions.
Yeah.
Very, very focused. So it was very, very serious.
Yeah. Do you prefer routines to Jack and Jills, or did you then?
I don't necessarily. Well, I really, really love competing. Like if I were to ever go back to the West Coast Swing scene, I would love to perform again. Like performing, I think, was a huge part of why I stuck around with it. And it's really interesting because like in a lot of dancing, you don't do the same routine all year long. You change things up and you compete at one thing, and then you might, but essentially you're trying to perfect a routine for like a whole year to then perform at the US Open. And now you have to say goodbye to it. And then you're on to another routine. It's like a little relationship in itself with the routine. So I think I loved making something better for a long time and then performing it. So performing was definitely cool, but it does come with its challenges. Like a US Open floor trial at 5 a.m. is like a show on its own, right? Like if you want to go see some things go down, like that's the place. And it's interesting that they allow people, I don't know if they do it now, but they used to allow people to go watch these floor trials. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to see people like, I don't know, maybe because there's like everybody, it's like Real Housewives of West Coast Swing, right? It's like you see the arguments, you see I've seen floor trials. I remember one time Kyle and Sarah, they were doing, I remember she was wearing like a purple thing, she broke her nose in a floor trial, we had to rush to the hospital. Sarah broke a fight between Ben and I when we were 17 during floor trials. Like you have these moments. So things about competing with your routine, I think there's a lot of stress around it, but it is pretty magical, I think, because you kind of, for me personally, like I black out for 3 minutes and then you have this immense energy afterwards. So it's really hard to come down from, I think. But competition's like, if you like that risk and you're like, I don't know what song I'm going to get, I might not know what I'm going to get. Like it's that trick, it's a bit difficult.
Yeah. So totally different than the routines divisions.
Yeah. And you have to, I think with Jack and Jills, I spent such a long time trying to impress like the people that were sitting behind me. And I think it's really obvious when you watch somebody and they're doing a Strictly or Jack and Jill, and it's like they're so focused on being funny or being cool, being relatable to the people behind them. And I was like not focusing on the audience, not focusing on my partner. And I look back at these videos and I'm like, The dancing is fun, Mel. Like it's okay, like it's a fine. You can enjoy it, and so it's very interesting to watch Jack and Jill's back, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I so focused on being like, looking good and being funny. And then I look at other videos that have been my most successful Jack and Jill's. Like I remember it was Swing Diego 2010. And it was a really good 2010 was an interesting year for me. It was like a very pivotal year in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the alternate to a Champions Jack and Jill. Now, I will tell you what, somebody who's always put on a pedestal from the time they were 12 years old, who's been told how amazing they were, and then you tell them they're alternate, like, whoa, what? No, I'm so good. Right? No, it was like, I was just a big brat about it. And but that's the thing, right? So you place people on a pedestal and then you give them second place, or you don't put them in a Jack and Jill. I'm not saying it's not deserved, but sometimes it's very much expected. And for me, I expected it because I'm like, every single year since I was so little, I've always made every having a Jack and Jill. And then Deborah Seike faked an injury so that I can be in the finals.
Oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah, it's all coming out. So she faked an injury for me to be in the finals. Michael Kim, I don't think was aware because he was like the MC, and he called out like, from Boston. And I'm like, I'm not from Boston. And it was like, from Boston. I'm like, I get it. I'm like alternate. I get it. Like the paperwork was not meeting up. And I drew Mark Scheifele, and Mark Scheifele and I had never really danced together. And it was one of those throwback, like you got to pick a routine song that had been done by somebody who else is dancing. Yeah. And we danced to Pump It, right? And like, I grew up with Pump It. Pump It is one of the best routines ever. Like I can tell you everything about that, right? So it was so much fun. We got second place. It was the most amazing thing ever. And again, it's because I was focused on the joy, In my mind, I was like, I was already an alternate. I was already like, dealing with all these things, like I might as well just have a good time.
Yeah. That's so funny that you like bring that up, because that's something that Cassie and I kind of harp on quite a bit when we're watching, going through and analyzing things. We only typically for this show do the champions, but for other things we look at the lower levels. And just something that we constantly come up with is just like, I wish these, this partnering was just having fun more so than just really trying to, like, you can feel when they're trying so hard,
Yeah,
at least I can.
But I will say, I'm just turning this off, on the other side, right? you gotta care, right? So on the other side, I know, and I'm just talking about my experience and when I grew up, like we were just starting to get to the point where it was like not cool to care. If you tried too much, if your technique was too good, if you looked like you came from ballroom, if you looked like you came from another style, at the time, West Coast swing was just not very accepting. That's the truth. So you're like, no, your hips are like, it's too technical. Like you want to look like and then now look at West Coast swing now. It looks just like everything is very different. Everything's very technical. Everybody looks like they've trained at Juilliard. And it's like, it's very different. Yeah. And so it's difficult to be like, have fun, but give a shit, right? Like care, right? Like care about your partner, care about the DJ, care about where you're at, especially if you're getting paid to be there, or just like the environment. So yeah, it's a very interesting balance you have to play in your mind.
Exactly. And I think that's for people that have no experience with any kind of performances, like that's just such a hard thing to wrap your mind around, is that like you really have to have a good balance of things. Otherwise, it's just the performance isn't going to come off the way that you're wanting it to come off. Exactly.
And I mean, and you're dealing with people who've like have anxiety, have like ADHD, have all these things, and like and you're trying to be like, yeah, have fun, and then also stare here, and then also make these people laugh, and then every 45 seconds you have to do something super cool, and then keep both feet on the ground, and then worry about the points, and then by the way, now it's going to be videotaped and put everywhere. So yeah, it's a lot to worry about.
It's a lot of pressure, and you know what, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's not the most fun thing, but it is what it is, right? There's a reason we do what we do.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
when and how did you meet Ben and start dancing with him?
Well, Ryan and I did another routine together. So we did a routine in 2002, and then there was a summer of 2003. What is there a song like that? No, it's like 2002, right? Is that Rita Ora? Something like that. So it was like summer of 2003, and Ben's first dance partner is actually Samantha Buckwalter. So he danced with Samantha Buckwalter in 2002, I think. I'll have to call her and ask her, but 2002, and they had danced together first. And then him and I hit it off at summer dance camp, and I forget what the name of this director was, but it was like the summer dance camp in July. Everyone went to it. It was like the biggest party event in Palm Springs. And so we had met there. He was dancing with another person and training with the Schwimmers. So he was actually training with them because he was from Colorado. He wasn't in California at the time. Yeah. And we hit it off, and then you're teenagers, and then you end up falling in love, and then you become dance partners. That's just how it goes, I guess. and then we decided to dance together. So we danced our first routine was in 2003. So I would go back and forth and he would too, from California to Colorado, and Colorado back to California. And I remember our first prize that we won was 2003. We had our like US Open prize money, and that prize money went to our phone bills because the long distance that we were racking up, our parents were like, no. So there was no like long distance plan, that we had. So I did a lot of my growing up in Colorado. Like Colorado's very special to me. Big props to Ben's mom and my mom for really making sure, like, you had these two teenagers who were like, we want to dance together, and we then want to stay at each other's houses, and we want to do this. By the way, like, I'm from California, he's from Colorado, so is that cool? So you yeah, I was 14 when I met Ben.
Yeah. It's such a different life.
Yeah, definitely. I was 14 when I met him, and then we just started dancing from there. And in 2003, we ended up winning our first US Open young adults division. And then shortly after that, he started transitioning his way to moving to California. So yeah, it was still very back and forth, though, very back and forth. But that's how we met. We met at a dance event. I remember I was dancing, those partnerships or those relationships that you are on the dance floor and then you end up dancing like 5 songs together.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is awesome. This feels great. We just happen to be teenagers and like in a relationship. So we were just like, it was our way of making it work. Like, we'll just dance together.
That's what we do it.
Yeah. So I have a lot of great memories there. And then also, we did a routine that Benji had cut the music and did the choreography for. And I then did that routine with Ben, and we made changes and made it our own, because at the time Ben was very into the Lindy Hop scene, and so we wanted to be, our own style. And then at the Open, the Robert Royston made an announcement like, okay, I'm so glad they don't do this anymore, because in the juniors division they used to say 5th place and choreographed by 4th place and choreographed by. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wait, you don't think these kids can choreograph it on their own, first of all? Second of all, and then they did ours, and it's like choreographed by themselves. And it's like, we didn't do it by ourselves. Benji did the choreography that Ben had. Then we had like 5 coaches help us, because we had 5 coaches that had nothing to do with Ben, and then Ben's coaches. And so we then had to write down all of the names of people that helped us and give it to them. And on the video, VHS, I'm assuming, or DVD, you can still see this like argument essentially in the background during awards because of that. It was really intense.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Impressive.
I'm glad that I didn't do it anymore. Like, I don't want to know who choreographed it. I'm just going to assume everybody choreographed their own thing or they paid somebody to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But speaking of, I was going to say, should we transition into looking at some of the routines?
So the first routine of yours and Ben's we're going to look at is the 2008 one. And is there any like backstory you want to give before I drop the link in the chat for everybody?
That's the cream with the white, right?
Yeah.
This was really a fun routine because, like I said, at the time it was like the slowest West Coast Swing routine that had been seen at the time, and we got so much coaching from people in different fields for this because it was so slow. Now you're looking at it, you're like, this is not slow, this is so fast. Like, this is like what Jack and Jill's get danced to these days. Like, this is nothing. But at the time it was pretty slow. Also, this particular costume caused an uproar. Like the YouTube comments I got from this was like so intense. Like, people just really didn't like it. So then they wanted me
gorgeous. You look absolutely gorgeous in that costume.
Red told me that I looked like a tampon. And I'm like, damn it, I paid like $1,500 to look like a tampon. Like, what? And and I laughed at that. That was like, he was being funny. But the comments on YouTube were intense. Like, you're 19 years old and then everybody is making comments about your body. So that was a really difficult thing for me. But the routine itself, loved it.
Yeah, it's a great routine. Shall we?
Yeah. Link is in the chat. So everybody go ahead and give it a watch. And when you're done, we'll get to more chatting.
I thought for some reason we were watching the Swing Diego one, the one we did in Swing Diego, but this one's really interesting. This was actually filmed at the Grand Ole Opry.
Mm-hmm.
I look back at these videos and I'm like, that's where Elvis did stuff, and that's like Dolly Parton sings there, and I'm like, we're just two West Coast Swing dancers, not just, but we're like two West Coast Swing dancers dancing at the Grand Ole Opry. Like, I don't think that we were comprehending any of that. I'm just like, don't mess up these 1 foot spins. Don't mess up these 1 foot spins. That's what I'm. And you can see videos, like, when I'm talking about not trained, right? Those are the things that when you're talking about trained dancers, it's so much of an easier concept for them to understand. Like, doing a 1 foot spin, doing an arabesque, like all of that, you had to learn it from a partner's perspective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I picked that one, and the other one I picked because if we wanted to frame through it all, those would be easier to see because there's more contrast between you and Ben in the background. So, yeah.
And this one, because it was at a theater, we couldn't see anything. It was all black. So it was all black in front, which was really, really interesting,
Yeah. Do you like that vibe, or do you hate that? Because I know people either love it or hate it.
I don't like it. I started doing the West Coast Swing and performing because I like looking at people. Like, I like to be like, yeah, check me out. Like, did you see that? Yeah, you did. And then like, I do a turn, I do something awesome. Like, yeah, did you see that? Yeah. Okay. And so like, I love connecting with different people in the audience,
Yeah.
I love doing that. And it's a bit difficult for me. I don't know. For me, it was a bit difficult with the turning and things like that. But I think for this particular routine, it was good that we did it there because we are looking at each other a lot anyways in this. So it was a bit easier for this one.
Yeah. So where in the life of that routine did this performance take place?
This was Nashville. So we did this at the US Open in 2008. Yeah, 2008. And then the US Open was in November. This was in January. So we had performed it for a couple of months. Our best run was probably, I think, shortly after this, or sometime after this at Swing Diego. Now at the time there wasn't that many events. Like, now you can go to an event every weekend and do your routine. There wasn't that many. So this was really cool because it was one of the first times, and bringing Ben into this UCWDC like country western dance scene that I grew up with as well. It was great to kind of bring both of our worlds together. And so we were teaching there. We won something, I think. and there was an award ceremony, but I missed it because I was talking to one of my boyfriends at the time. So I felt pretty bad for that one. But so like there's in this song, it says, loving you is like loving a house on fire.
Mhm.
And at the time I'm like, oh my God, this song, it's so intimate, it's so da da da. And I was like that. Like that's who I was at this particular age. It was like loving me was like loving a house on fire. It was that I was during this particular time, I was dating two people. I was dating this guy from the UK at this event, and I was still in love with the person I was dancing with. So it was like so intense.
That sounds like it.
So the
Can't
like
imagine.
the intensity in this is like very accurate, no, but it was a couple months of going into it. We'd already done it at the US Open, and already it was taking on a different animal. So we would just get better and better and better at it, I think. And for me, the 1 foot spins was the part that was really difficult. And then by the time that we got to doing it the semis the following year at the US Open, it felt like a completely different routine.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting how that all evolves when you like start performing something. It's just like you start to identify things that you don't particularly love, or just doesn't necessarily work for you as a partnership. So it's just interesting how all of that evolves. And
I mean, these routines that we picked, I don't know if we were like self-torturing ourselves or whatnot. I remember we were like 18 when we first did our first classic routine was a song by Rob Thomas called "This Is How a Heart Breaks."
mm-hmm.
Love that song. Love that song.
It was Rascal Flatts' "Lean on Me" rendition going into "This Is How a Heart Breaks." And like we had just broken up. What are we doing? And we danced that song, and now we're dancing to this song. It's like, what are we doing to ourselves? And then we'd go home and like, why do we not like our dance partner today? Like what it's, torture you put yourself through just to get the routine.
Yeah.
Well, we'll pay for years of therapy after this, but as long as we got those 1 foot spins and I was able to impress them, worth it.
Well, it is a great routine. So
yeah,
do you have a favorite part of it?
Do I have a favorite part of it? Yes. There's a part where I go through his legs, and at the end I go like dun, dun, and I just like do a snap, and I love that. And there's a part in the beginning, I think, where like we do a shimmy kind of thing. I very much wanted to be Jessica Cox at this time, so there is a part that we took from her Al Green routine where I'm like walking towards Ben, like we saw that and we're like, this would look so good, and so I love that part too.
That's great. I mean, I don't blame you for wanting to be Jessica Cox.
Yeah,
I feel like.
I still want to dance like her. Just
But-
And for those who may not know, her surname now is McCurdy. So
yeah, that's pretty. I mean, actually, Jessica, I still talk to very much, and she's wonderful, and it's so interesting. So like, she's a great example of somebody who, when it came to like Jack and Jill's and stuff, she was always very nervous, and then to see, you wouldn't expect that, but she always focused on the fun for me, especially she loves like Sam Cooke and songs like that. And so when I saw her dancing to the songs, I was like, hey, you can remember to have fun, Mel, like it's okay.
Yeah. Give yourself permission.
Yeah.
So did we want to frame through any of that? Maybe the
I don't know. Would you enjoy framing through some of that routine, or do you want to focus more on the second one?
Sure. You guys are the expert at digesting. Let's see.
All right, cool. Well, do the screen share.
That part, that bit back there was. Oh, this part was. I love this part.
Right.
Like, oh God, slow motion.
Yeah.
Definitely makes dancers look so good. This costume, we saw it on Dancing with the Stars, and then that's how we wanted it.
Oh, really?
Nice.
The first costume that we had done that my mom didn't make for us.
Oh, wow.
Cute. I was like, who am I going to sleep with next? That's what I it was a horror. It was like one of those times. Not good. Love this part. Paul Warden also, he's the one who would always send me videos of himself doing this one little part. I don't know if you got Paul Warden from the UK.
Yeah.
Look at those intense eyes. Also, dancing this slow to do some proper West Coast swing technique, the rolling on your feet, we would get blisters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we would get blisters, and we would the way that we would practice and like our little ritual before everything would we do like three sugar pushes, and we try to like really get them well and connected, because in a routine like this you've got to be extremely connected, because if one of you is faster than the other, it just doesn't work. It's a lot harder to hide anything.
Mm-hmm.
Go through my legs. Here I am, spread eagle.
Was this one choreographed by you guys, or?
Yeah, this is us. But as always, we got help from a lot of people. Like for this particular routine, we got help from some outside sources, like who weren't West Coast Swing dancers. So yeah, this one we choreographed ourselves. I mean, after we left juniors, we choreographed everything ourselves, but we always, still get help. I mean, even at the time where we were at the peak of our career, we'd always ask for help. Ben was always so good at doing that. He'd always like try to book a lesson with some person or get a critique, or Jordan would always look at something for us, or Deborah was always great like that with us. She would always at a competition when we were gearing up for the Open, give us some private lessons.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's so important to do that, just have
learning can never stop, but you gotta be open to it. I at the time I was like, oh, like we can do this ourselves, but no, like we did the choreography ourselves, but we got help.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of this is in the beginning and the Jessica Cox bit. I think it's see now it looks like a regular pace routine, like it looks like the pace of our next routine. This part, love that part. Like the leg over.
Yeah.
Like I was every single time I was feeling myself during that. Do you know what I mean? Like I love that part. Like look at how like my hand is like coming down. Like I'm like, ooh. Yeah. And this part was pretty sick here. So do you see what I mean by like when you are not necessarily, that's probably the only picture that I've seen of myself where I'm like, ooh, look, it's slow motion and it stopped perfectly. It's even there, like I had to force my foot to not be like sickle. I had to like really focus on making sure that it was like bam, and even then it's just like if you're not raised with that kind of flexibility when you're so young, it's a lot to remember. I remember being 12 years old and teaching myself how to do the splits in my bedroom, trying to perfect it. I'm glad I didn't rip anything, but all these things I think I had to learn a little bit later. So yeah. And that costume, like the stuff on the costume there, every single time we'd perform, we would lose a little bit of it. And so I think towards the end, like the following year, it was like just a small amount that was still there.
Did you hear about Emily Huang's outfit losing like 1,000 rhinestones at the US Open for showcase this year? It was amazing. I was watching it on Global Dance, and like they did a fantastic job, but it took a good like 5-10 minutes to get them all up off the floor for the next couple to go on. It was bonkers.
Yeah, this kept losing strings, but the strings would stay attached to me at least, so it wasn't like on the floor. But I would say one year at Swing Diego, we were dancing to This Is How a Heart Breaks. It was our first time doing classic division in our hometown, and my top came off.
Oh no.
It was a halter top. I think Doug Silton has this video somewhere. It was a halter top, and the back of it like split, like broke. And so I'm like, and Ben's like he's still dancing, and I'm like, anyways, he figured it out. And then I've never seen so many. Sarah Van Drake, Brandy Tobias, Lorraine Beldovi came out with safety pins out of places that I don't know where they got them, like safety pins, or the Hollywood tape, whatever, sticky tape, like all this stuff that they came through, and I had so much metal. Like if I were to go through TSA during that time, I would not have made it. Like the metal that was bound to me. We did it again. We did the routine again, which was nice, but
yeah,
it happens. You have stuff like that happens all the time,
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, people are lucky and they don't, but eventually that happens. And
I mean, if you see enough performances.
If you go back and watch me and Ben's first ever routine, 2003 to it was Basement Jacks. Like the glue that you put on clothes, right? It's called E6000 glue. So it's like professional glue that rhinestones. I rhinestoned a strip of rhinestones on my head. So
oh no.
Yeah. In the award ceremony, I still have the hair. It's like, why do you have this competition hair, Mel, still? It's like, because I can't take it out. Like, it's stuck. And it was on there forever. And we had to I'd lost so much hair. So do not stick rhinestones to your head with E6000 glue.
That is good advice.
Duly noted. That sounds deeply unpleasant.
I'm lucky I have hair. I'm lucky I have hair. Okay.
I can imagine how damaging that would
because
be.
The hair in that video that we just saw was extensions, full-on extensions. Like I had very short hair.
Wow.
And that was extensions. This is my real hair. So that's what I mean. At the time, you're doing so much damage. You're gluing things to your hair. You had to do all the stuff. And in the early 2000s in West Coast Swing, everybody was living off of Red Bull, Coca-Cola, and just not hydrating at all. It was not, and maybe it's just the way that the world is now too. Like I know Gen Z, for example, is a bit more cautious of mental health, a bit more cautious of what goes into your body. And so here, we were not doing that. And so I was like, rhinestones? Sure. I just had 7 Red Bulls. What's the difference? And just tie them to my head.
Oh my goodness. So we're going to look at your 2009 routine next. And I think this is literally one of the first routines I ever saw in person for West Coast Swing.
Really?
And I still remember, the kind of mutual matrix is what I call it. Do you have a name for that dip where you support each other, counterbalance?
We called it the flat, but I don't think it was a name because we wanted to name it. I think it was when we were trying to figure out oh, the flat looks good if the flat doesn't look good this time. That's what we called it. But we actually, Ben and I did an event recently, a couple of years ago, I think in Queensland here, called Swing Station, and we drew each other and we redid some of this of the flat. We did it again. I remember
that because I think that ended up on YouTube and I lost it.
Yeah. And what a lot of people don't know is that we redid our whole first junior routine as well in Texas. The first routine we ever did juniors in 2003 with, we redid that I think in 2013, 14 at Wild Wild Westy. So we relearned that and did it together. Yeah, that was pretty
awesome. Cool. Oh my goodness.
I know it was called the flat.
Yeah. Awesome. But yeah, I remember seeing that in person was one of those moments where I realized how much more was available in this dance. I'd already fallen head over heels in love with it, but I was there's so much more. It was just really cool.
Where was it?
Love you guys. It would have been in the Pacific Northwest because I didn't try. So it might have been Easter.
Oh yeah, we would do that.
Yeah. So while I'm fetching the link, is there any backstory you want to share about the 2009 routine?
This routine was the last routine that we ever did together. So this essentially was then I left and went to Australia, and this was also our most successful routine that we ever had on the circuit. So we at the US Open, we performed this in 2009 and we got second place. And it was, this was a moment to where I had in my career a really good, just a feeling. And I know the song's called I've Got a Feeling, but it was the most amazing feeling afterwards. I dropped on the floor, and then I had this conversation with Robert Burston afterwards that him and I have spoken about several times. He pulled me aside and said, so many dancers in their whole life will never get to experience that one moment you just had. Yeah. So regardless of the placement, like just focus on that. And it is essentially that feeling that I had there doing this routine at the US Open in particular, like that is a high that I chased for a very long time. Because and that's what kept me wanting to perform, and that still keeps me wanting to perform, not necessarily with that song with the partner in the same place, but like that moment was amazing. And we got second place. You know, I think it was what you were saying to the Vita La Vida, that one. Yeah. We were so close to getting to, it was like one judge or something, but at the end it was like the first time that I was like, whoa, this feeling is so much greater than this placement I'm gonna get, you know. So that was that. The person that did this mix, because it's a mix, is Remy. So he is an amazing Lindy Hop dancer from France, and he's also a DJ. So he's also, I think, had done some of Ben and Victoria's mixes as well. So he was the first time that we used him for this one. So yeah, that's the backstory.
Awesome. The link is in the chat. Go ahead and give it a watch, everybody.
On the chat, I wrote, point your toes, Mel.
Every time we have a follow on, all they do is like, why'd you do that? Just like all this.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, well, the couple things I noticed. One, the distinct difference of skin tone and Ben and I, because of the amount of self tanner I had on. One.
Let me pull up the recording and I'll just like have it going while you talk.
Two, those gloves I bought at some, like, I don't know, Spencer's or something like that, I think. And we cut out the middle of them so that, like, essentially we could actually dance and grip, but they were so sweaty. And yeah, and even there he was like, Mal, you're going the wrong way. And so he was like pulling me to come in. And what's funny is that the big move that Ben had where he's like on the floor. Yeah. And look, watch. It's like, oh, hi guys. He's like, nope, this way. We're coming this way. And they say he has this like move on the floor, right? So he like gets pulled up. Well, somebody else had the same exact move that year, which happens, you know. And then we're like, oh no, it's not going to be as impressive. This one. Yeah, but it was. And then we did it at Swing Diego where both of us do that together. And then we got docked. I think something happened, or we didn't have connection for, like, I think 8 counts or something like that. And so, yeah, we should have kept it to this. But this was such a fun routine. I loved this routine. It was so joyous.
Such a different vibe than the other one we were just looking at.
A very different vibe. I think at this point we were kind of like, I guess we'll be friends now. And we'll dance to happy music. And you know what? Every partnership that, and you know, it doesn't change. Like dancing, there's a lot of really emotional people, there's creatives, and so of course they're going to be attracted to, or they're going to be with people that have the same interests. And then but then it comes to play when you're like, oh, now we're dance partners. And then when that finishes, you really have to figure out how to maintain some sort of relationship that has nothing to do with that, you know. And what you said was like, when I watched this, I was like, point your toes. What I do now is I show my routine to like my son, and then that way I can watch it through his eyes. He never critiques it, or like my friends will be like my biggest cheerleaders are like, yeah, that was cool. And I'm like, oh, toes, yeah. But I don't do this. I spent so long of my West Coast swing dance career like caring so much about my weight, caring so much about if my hair was perfect. Like I remember being like, oh, you have a pimple? It's okay. You've got pretty hair today. Oh, your hair looks shit. It's okay. You're 10 pounds lighter today. That is horrible way to be in any kind of dance. But that's what it is. That's the dance scene. That's creative scene where you're out there, especially performing like this.
Yep.
And I think I finally reached the point, you know, after I left the scene for a little bit and was able to watch videos and be like, enjoy them and enjoy the fact that, like, you know, there will come a time where I'll look back and be like, I can't do this anymore. you know, so that's where I'm at now with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, at this point, this was so much fun. This was also the time in our career where we were getting along really well. And then I left. I lit it all on fire. When you guys did the interview with Phoenix, he was like, yeah, I discovered West Coast Swing in 2010. I was like, by the time I got to 2010, I had lit my dance career on fire. And I had moved all the way across the country, left everything I knew, and like went to rehab. Like that was like where I was at already. Yeah, but watching this is really cool. I mean, at the front there, you have Janice Salmon. I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she's was pretty prominent in the California scene. You've got Malia St. Nicholas there that is at the front with she was dating Ben at the time, really big supporter. And so she had like the material that we had like the tartan material there. She was waving it back and forth. I think we made some of our costume from like some material and like some socks or something.
So did you have a favorite part of this particular routine?
I think that part, definitely. Anybody knows me, that's very me. Like definitely that part, like yes. We changed this at Grand Nationals a little bit towards the end. Ooh, the slow motion. Yes. And I would say the part of this routine that I really, not that fall, the part of this routine that I really liked a lot was in the beginning. And then the transition going into, so like you have a bunch of turns and then there's like a dip and then you were about to get into I've Got a Feeling, because you know, it was such a cool moment to then go into this really joyous song that at the time was like really big and everybody knew. We were so surprised that nobody else did this song.
Yeah, it was a popular song at that point.
Yeah, we were really surprised. And I don't know if somebody did, and it might have been like a semis or in a completely different division. I'm not quite sure, but we were so surprised that not somebody in this particular division did it. So yeah, and actually to go on that, I will say Kyle and Sarah, when Ben and I were going to do our first 2003 routine in juniors, we did a song called was it Do Your Thing? I think it was. Anyways, they were going to do that song too. Like they at a time were going to do a song, and then they decided to completely change everything around and give us the song.
Oh wow.
I'm trying to remember if it was that one or a different one. I can't think about it, but which is super kind, you know. So you have all this support, but yeah, my favorite part is look at us trying to be like hip hop superstars. It's and this is Kanye now, so you know it's a bit controversial. But I love this routine so much. And we worked our asses off during this. I remember we were at Atomic Ballroom all the time. And one thing I will say about Ben there is like he will work his ass off. Like he practices so much and he really kept us going. This part, love this part. Like the dip, and then the transition into he goes dun, 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 and then I do like a booty roll kind of situation. And we redid this when we got together again. I don't know if that's like 5 years ago now, but yeah, we'd love this one. And you know, to go for the times, like look at those low-rise jeans, look at those low-rise black pants, and look at those shoes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I remember one time at Swing Diego, I wore one, like I forgotten different pairs of shoes. And so I was wearing different kinds of like those heeled shoes. It was so funny. And then this costume is now with Dawn Garish's daughter, Alexis. Her and Ryan wore this when they won juniors division, I think a couple years ago. I'm not sure, you should be able to find it, but they have this costume now.
Yeah.
Sarah Van Drake wore this costume when she was doing Bleeding Love as well. It's been around.
Apparently.
Apparently. Yeah, it's been around. Ben still has his somewhere, but mine's been around. So she wore that, and then it ended up with Alexa. So I mean, it went to a happy home.
Yeah.
It went to a happy home. Not a lot of people had issues with this one, at least, so that was okay. But I still have my other one that people had issues with.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was great. I mean, at the end, you can see like we're just so ecstatic. Do you know what I mean? Like we are just out of this world. This was one of my favorite parts too. And a lot of the stuff that we did was really cool. So some of my favorite moments of routines that we did together was a lot of stuff that like wasn't planned, that we ended up just feeling and doing. So I love that. Yeah, and this was a great routine, I think, to end our partnership with. You know, when you can look back and forget and not think about you know, how things ended, or not think about any of that, and just think about like, whoa, this is such a cool routine to essentially add an exclamation mark to the end of like a wonderful 8-year partnership. And when I show this to my son now, you know, I explained, he's like, who is this person? Like, what were you guys doing? Oh, there's Robert in the
He's
back.
like, he's so excited. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I know. I love watching people in the back. I mean, I know for routines it's really difficult because you can never really get like a, you know, an audience perspective, but I love it. And even there, like I'm staring at somebody, I don't, maybe like a Stan Janquish or somebody who was judging at the time, I don't remember, but like that's what I mean. I love performing where I can really see the audience, because you're constantly making connections with people.
Yeah.
And I might have blacked out for most of this performance, but I do remember making connections with particular people while I was doing it. And then when it ended, you can just see like a relief, like a, you know, we trained so hard for this one. We trained so hard. And, you know, there was always a part of me like, here, you're just like, and then like, And even when I watched this back originally, I was like, why didn't you bow? You should have bowed. You know, they tell you that if you, it's like what I do now in business, right? It's like, if you finish off like acting like you nailed it, you're super confident and you had this amazing thing, like, then the judges will be like, yeah, they did it. They nailed it. It was amazing. Top score. Yeah. Whereas like for me, I was like, I'm so excited. I finished it. I think I'm crying. Like my contact was falling out. Like there was so many things happening. And then I was just like, floor.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, there was a bow in the choreography at the end. So
we already bowed. What else do you want?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so I showed this to my son. I was like, trying to explain to him what it was, and he put it into like a really interesting perspective. You know, he was like, "Oh," and I said, "Yeah." So we traveled together. We would work together, and he was like, "Oh, like your best friend, travel buddy." And I was like, "You know what? To have this little teeny human explain this to me, it's like." It's really difficult to explain what a dance partnership is to a lot of people. Essentially, it's like a marriage, right? So you in a partnership in a business, like you're so entailed. You're traveling together every single weekend. You are sharing hotel rooms every single weekend. You're working together. You're making money together. You each know each other's drink of choice. You know each other's like food, beverages. You know, oh, like I know that he can't have this much milk, so he's going to need his pills. Or I know that, you know, like all of these things. And then you just get so into the competition aspect, first place, making sure that you're better than everybody else. And you forget that this is a very unique experience that a lot of people in the world probably don't ever get to experience.
Yeah, so true.
So that's me speaking now after so many things. At the time, it's very difficult to process.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Do you have a, I know there are probably lots, but a favorite funny story about Ben that we can troll him with later?
I will say there is not a world that exists right now where I will ever speak badly about Ben. You know, he was.
Oh yeah, that's not what I mean. I mean,
yeah, he was 16 when he met me. And there is a lot actually, but I'm just trying to think because it's all kind of like I said, I drank a lot back then, so a lot of it is pretty blurred. But I'll have to think about some. I mean, there's tons of stuff that happens in the early 2000s that's not on video. I think if I had like my camera or like, you know, something like if I had an iPhone then, I feel like I would remember so many different things. But no, I can't think of any now. But if I do, I will definitely send it to you.
Just message and I will read it.
Blast it. I'll blast it. Yeah. I mean,
I'll save it for when we have him on as an individual, because he's been on a panel before, but we haven't had him on as an individual yet.
But I will say that when I first met Ben, he had sideburns that were down to like here.
Wait,
And
so he and
had,
Jordan like matched?
Yeah. I have one story, but no, I can't say it. So then his hair was like a wall, like he called it the wall, because he would like kind of like, do you remember like Lance Bass's hair, right? So it was like this, or like flat, and then like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So he had flat
That's
hair,
amazing.
and like a wall like that, and then he had long what is sideburns? Yeah, sideburns. And then I think when he first met me, he didn't really wear jeans or anything like that. So he'd love to wear, because in saying that, he was like dancing in the Lindy Hop scene a lot. So it's like he wore like dress pants and stuff and all that. But that's when I first met him. He had, yeah, like Jordan, and in his room when we were growing up and I would go to Colorado, there was a huge poster of Jordan Tall on the wall.
Oh, really?
What? Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it was like because when they came to Denver, it was like advertising. And
Gotcha.
then he gave it to him or something. And so we would go, when we were in Colorado, there would be a big poster of Jordan Tot like in his room and stuff. Yeah. That's the only, it's not embarrassing. Like, it's like people have their favorite basketball people on the thing.
Yep.
Yeah, Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So but after this, I will definitely find some more stories for you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
That was so much fun. And for those that like before we went live, that was so much fun too.
Yeah. It's nice chatting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice chatting. Thank you so much. I mean, I will it'll be fun to go back to dancing. I went back to the States in September, and it'll be interesting to go back. I mean, I have no intention to just stop completely. I mean, even here in Australia, we had a dance studio for a long time. Like, we had a dance event for a long time, but I was still like dancing, I think, for like students and everybody else. I'm very excited to go back to California and see what it's like to fall in love with dancing again.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And not have it be like a job,
Right.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for having me. It was lovely meeting you and your little dog.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all next time. Yep.
Which we have yet to decide on a topic.
Yep.
But we will come up with one.
Yeah.